Hello, everyone. I'm Chelsea, Joe, and Nick's mom, also known as Diana.
And I'm Shauna Marie's mom, but you can call me Darlene. Welcome to
Mom's Gone Mad,
where it's okay to go a little bit mad when you're a mom.
If 1 out of 2 marriages end in divorce, it's inevitable that many will remarry and create what so many are known today as blended families. Family therapist Vivian Jacob has helped hundreds of families learn how to keep the peace amongst a house full of his kids, my kids, and our kids. Let's welcome her to the program. So this is so well needed for our viewership because we have a lot of parents that have been divorced and remarried and they have kids and now they're all blended together. And I know there's like this typical stereotype of the evil stepmother, but then you look at the Brady Bunch and it's not that way. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, as far back as we can go, there's always been the evil stepmother in all the fairy tales that we have read. And
Exactly.
usually, if you notice, they either are witches, they're goblins, they're ghosts, they're wolves. They're always very negative, ugly, and scary. And so, as a stepmother, which I am myself, you kind of step into the shoes thinking it will be a very big challenge, and indeed it is. Even the simple word of the step that's added in front of the mother or stepdaughter, right away it's like, ooh.
A negative connotation.
Negative connotation. On the other side, you have the Brady Bunch, which some of us grew up on, where everything is la-di-da, and of course they love each other, and of course the brothers and sisters think they're terrific. And the parents have the same rules, and they love to vacation and eat meals together, and that's not true.
This doesn't happen.
This doesn't happen, and if it does, it takes time. And that's one of the things that we have to be aware of. You think you fall in love with a man, you will fall in love with his children, they will fall in love with you. Well, that doesn't happen immediately. And they say that it can even take up to 12 years for 2 families to feel as one family. And you can never really think that you will be a nuclear family, which is a family of origin. You're hoping to create a family, but it will be a different kind of family. Wow. And so you need to be patient and tolerant, and mostly with yourself, which is something as a stepmother we have a hard time doing because we expect that we should be able to do it.
And the mothers are like the gatekeeper of the household.
Exactly.
So I think that's why I think the stepmother is the stepmother.
Right.
I mean, you hear things about stepfathers, but it's the stepmother.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
You know?
And not that stepfathers don't have a huge role to play, but there isn't the same stigma attached to it. And you're right, it is the mother who is the nurturer in the family.
Right.
So as a stepmother, she's also expected to be the nurturer.
And the disciplinary as well at some point.
Yes. But
And
that's
kinda
interesting.
interesting because of the stepchild or children.
And they say, the research really says that you should leave the disciplining to the biological parent. And you can increase your discipline with the amount of love that you feel.
Wow. That's
So
interesting.
the closer you feel to the child, then the more you can discipline and the more they will accept it. But if you come in and you say, okay, I'm going to fix this family. After all, it's hurting.
Right.
They've had a loss, either through divorce or through death of a spouse. And you come in and you say, I'm going to rescue.
Right.
Well, very often you can't rescue right away.
So how does it really work with the biological mother and the stepmother, and how do you really keep the peace when they're just maybe in the situation there isn't peace? I mean, how do you, as maybe the stepmother, I hate saying that word, but it doesn't sound right like you said, but
I
do you have
know.
another word?
Not really.
I know. So how do you, as the stepmother, try and keep the peace when you really truly love your husband, you want to make this a go, but then there's the real mother who's just making it intolerable for you?
Well, I think the most important thing that we have to remember is that we are the grown-ups. And often, especially when it's true, right? And we often find ourselves behaving worse than the children, especially with the ex-spouse. And often let's just say that we're the stepmother and then there's an ex-husband.
Right.
And he has an ex-wife that he has to contend with. Well, you as a stepmother have to understand that she is the mother.
Right.
And therefore you owe her respect. And you must understand that the children will always love her and that she's important in their lives. And so the communication, what you can do as a stepmother is to help your spouse communicate better with his ex.
Oh,
Right.
And that's a key, and that's where you can be a negotiator rather than become a competitor, which as women we tend to maybe want to do too much. There's room for everyone in a blended family, because the more children, the more people that we have to love our children, the happier they will be. So
true.
as a stepmother, try not to compete with the ex-spouse. Try to include her at events that you organize. Try to make sure that you don't leave her out of something important. Don't say Christmas is at my house every year. You can't have Christmas. Negotiate again, negotiate, negotiate. And then in turn, the stepchildren will reward you
Right.
because they will be thankful that you didn't torpedo out
right.
their mother.
What now? I'm just trying to think of a situation where the stepmother, like you said, is trying not to be the disciplinarian, but let's say the kids live with you as the stepmother, and the father works a lot and he's not home, and the kids are saying, well, you're not my mother. And how do you handle that when you really need to be pretty much the primary disciplinarian, but then you have kids saying that because they're at a certain age and that's what comes out? How do you not stress as a stepmother?
Well, then there's the wonderful thing that you can do, which is a Bill of Rights.
Oh, what's that?
You as a stepmother have a Bill of Rights. And your Bill of Rights is that no matter what the feelings are that the stepchildren might have for you, they owe you respect. They don't owe you love. That hopefully will grow. But they do owe you respect. And remember the way I said that it really should be in the hands of the adults? Well, this, again, is something that should be handled with the spouse. Even if he comes home late. One of the things that I highly recommend is to have weekly family meetings where everyone gets together and then everything can come out. But what can happen and often happens is that the biological father sticks to his kids and then you stick to your kids and that can become very messy. But another golden rule is that the parents stick together. And then, once the door's closed, then you can do whatever you want and say what you want. But in front of the children, you have to have a common front. And respect, 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 talk, talk, talk. Communicate as much as you can.
And like you said, a weekly family meeting is probably you have to.
It helps. It helps, and it's not easy because everyone has, the kids go to school, they have homework, the father comes home late, you're stressed because it's the end of the day.
Right.
But if you don't, it's much better to try to catch the problems when they're small than until they escalate, and then there's anger.
Okay. So I'm wondering, in a step or blended family, if you have your own children, and then he has his children, and then we have children, at what point, who should come first, the couple or the kids, or how did the dynamics fall?
The simple answer is that the couple should come first, which is not an easy thing to do because you have lots of kids that are needy and wanting your attention all the time. But we know that our children grow up and eventually they leave the nest. And then if you haven't had time or taken the time to build the friendship and the alliance, there won't be much left. So carve time for yourself. Make sure that you go out on weekly dates. And preferably try not to talk about the kids, which is a challenge. Because when you think about it, you meet your first love, you fall in love, you have a whole courtship time. You can discuss all these things. When you find yourself in a blended family, you have a very quick courtship, and all of a sudden you have a family.
Right.
You're instant family, so you don't have time to really adjust to each other. And that's one of the things that I would highly recommend if you're thinking of becoming a blended family, is to take a parenting class together and to try to come up with parenting rules that you agree on before. Kind of have a technique that you agree on, and that whenever problems come up, remember we took this class and this is what we learned, because it's so difficult. So for the couple, take time out, go to the movies, go to the theater, vacation. They'll be fine without you. And when it comes to discipline, again, be a couple. even if you disagree.
I think it's very important that the kids see you as a bond, because then
Exactly.
they'll know that they can't come in between and go to daddy or mommy, because the both of you are united as one.
Exactly, and they already tend to do that with the other parent.
Oh, right.
That's
I
not in
see.
the house.
That's not in the house. So if you can avoid that at least at home, then you give the children less power. And we know that power for children can be frightening. If they have too much of it,
Right.
That's right.
they don't know who to lean against, and then they get into trouble. So that's a good thing to remember, is to take time for yourself. Take time for yourself also as a couple, but take time for yourself as a mother, as a stepmother. Go have that manicure. Go take that massage. Take time away so that when you come back, you feel replenished. You have more energy. You can start again.
Right.
Very important to take time for yourself.
Now, does instant love exist as far as, a step family or a blended family? I mean, does it really exist, or
It just takes time.
it just takes time?
Well, that's a little contradiction, because instant love
right.
should not take time, right?
Right.
But we know when we give birth to our children, we fall in love right away.
Right.
Or maybe if we have the baby blues, it might take a day or two, but that's something that comes from your gut. It's unconditional right away. That is not something that you can have really with your stepchild. But you develop affection, you develop love, and a wonderful goal to have is to become a friend, to become another parent, but never think that you will replace the mother, never replace the father, but to become an uncle, an aunt, a friend. And then the devotion and the love will develop as you learn to do more and more things together, as you have rituals that develop, as you have family events, as you go on vacation.
Right.
And that's how you build. But very often, as a stepmother, you feel, I should love, but I would like to normalize the fact that it's okay. You don't have to feel guilty if you don't have that same intense love. Doesn't mean that you're not devoted. Doesn't mean that you wouldn't be there if anything were to happen. But it's just not that same gut.
Yeah, I'm sure. But now let's talk about the mother, the biological mother, who, let's say the kids live with her, and there's, obviously the husband's remarried and has a wife and maybe kids or whatever. But she's really feeling she can't accept the fact of the whole situation. It's hard for her, and she has a lot of hatred and anger that's built up. So how do you help the mother who try not to show that to her kids, where I'm sure it's so easy to say, well, what did you do with your father this weekend? Or how do you try
only
and
bought you that
separate
because-
that? Right.
Yeah, right.
It's just,
Well, rule number one, never use the kids as messengers.
Right.
As much as you can, protect the kids, because there is a question of loyalty. The children will choose their biological parent. And then that creates a problem in the new couple.
right.
Right.
So again, it's up to the adults to try to communicate on the outside and keep the children on the inside protected from it. But you cannot think that it's an ideal situation. The ex-spouse needs money, wants the kids. There's problems of visitation. There's financial problems that come up. Who gets Christmas? Who gets Thanksgiving?
Right. Oh, there's so many things.
So many
Heartbreaking.
things that you have to think about, and very often you even need to think of getting a negotiator, a mediator.
Oh, that's
Mediator.
another great tip.
Right.
Mediator that can just sit down with you and say, it's kind of like you do when you're divorcing.
Right, an outside
Right.
person.
An outside person who's not so emotionally entangled in all these things. And then you try to follow the rules and abide by them. But it's tough because these emotions are high. One person is alone, she hasn't found a mate,
Right.
and the other one has moved on and possibly has another child, which opens up a whole different door. Again, loyalty for the kids. Is it allowed to love your step-parents? Is it okay? Will mommy think I don't love her anymore
Right,
because I like to go shopping with Jane?
right.
Right.
That's true too. I didn't even think of that. That's a whole, because they feel so obviously devoted to their mother, but then if they start to feel a connection with the stepmother, they feel
They're
guilty.
guilty.
I didn't even think about that issue. That's,
Right.
And how do you help with kids
child?
with that? There's just so many questions to ask you.
Well, there's one thing that I think is very helpful is support groups. There are support groups from
Right, I was
others.
going to ask, should they be in some type of counseling or therapy, or just to let them know that they're not alone?
Well, that's a little word of caution. If you choose to send your child or yourself to go into therapy for step-family issues, try to find someone who has experience in it, because it's such a gut kind of thing. It's so emotional. It's so entangled that it's helpful if that person has worked with other families in the same situation, because it is a totally unique set of rules, in addition to how complicated it is to be married, in addition to how complicated it is to be a parent. This is just added steps. So try to find someone that has experience. Find support groups. Find those parenting groups. Carve time for yourself, carve time for the biological parent to have with his own children. Stepmother doesn't have to be there all the time. She can step back and say, you know, take your kids and go away for a weekend. I'll be okay at home.
That's nice.
You know, so because we have to remember that their relationship existed before we came along. They have a whole past. Sometimes there's a parent that passed away, and you came in, and maybe you're dealing with their grief, their unresolved loss, and you respect that. Let her be. You know, she was part of who they became today.
Definitely.
So there's a lot of subtleties to a very complicated situation.
Well, we'd like to thank you so much for coming on and
you're
helping
welcome.
us to, you know, try to work through some of them. I'm sure there's so many more we could have sat and talked for
I
a
know.
week about this, but you helped, I'm sure hopefully helped so many moms at home. If you'd like to learn more about getting help for a blended family, please log on to our website at www.momsgonemad.com.